Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tights Frame of Mind, episode whatever. I think it's 47, but I could be wrong. Math is not my strong suit. But we have a special treat today. I have been taking notes on what you guys have told me you wanted to hear. And one of the things that I got a lot of feedback on was people wanted to hear nylon stories, which also, by the way, if you are not aware, there is a Patreon for the channel, and there's tons of let us say illicit type photos of other wares that you can't find anywhere else, myself included. All sorts of good stuff there that you can find that, you can put in your spank bank, if you know what I'm saying. Also, news of news, there was an call from Kathy from Strictly Anonymous, and she invited me along with Shiny Lover to be on a Patreon episode. So if you want to pop over to her Patreon to listen to us talk about naughty pantyhose things, that would be wonderful. But now let us get to the meat and potatoes of the story. Was that a dirty pun? I don't know. Okay. So this is, and I'm reading it old school because, as you guys may not well, I'm putting filters on, but I'm actually 790 years old. This is the story from try it again, Nylonnoisseur, which is a cool name, right? Nylonnoisseur. We met via FetLife, and he was kind enough to write out a very compelling story. So I feel happy to share it with you. So ready or not, here we come. This is the story of Nylonnosaur. The first time I ever wore nylon, I was 6 years old. This is also the first time I got caught. I was signed up for Pee Wee football and really wasn't enjoying playing. So, one of the excuses I would try to use to get out of practice and games was that it was too cold out. And where I lived, I definitely was cold during the fall and winter. Mom suggested that as an extra layer, I could wear a pair of pantyhose under my uniform. She even tried telling me about Joe Namath, a name that meant nothing to me. Oh, I know, right? Sacrilegious. And how he wore pantyhose. But I was a boy and boys didn't wear pantyhose. Spoiler alert. However, the seed had been planted, and one day I found a pair of laddered leg sheer energy that my mom had thrown away. I snuck them back into my room and decided to wear them to bed under my pajamas. I didn't like that the pantyhose had runs in them. I wanted the nylon coverage to be complete, like what I'm wearing today, right? Yeah. Have you noticed? Look at my legs. What do you think? I know, desperate. I didn't like that the pantyhose had runs in them. I wanted the nylon coverage to be complete, so I fixed this to slip one leg on normally and then turn the other leg inside out and put it over the same leg. I then put my pajamas on and slid under the blanket. When my mom came to tuck me in and lifted up the blanket to spread it, well, I frantically told her not to notice the double layer of orange tinted nylon on my right foot. She was cool about it and asked why I was wearing them. For some reason, curiosity didn't seem like a good excuse, so I told her it was because my right foot stuck out of the covers and got cold. Oh, our kids so cute when they lie. Then I took them off and she threw them away, and I promised I would never wear them again. The following year, I was cast in a lead in a school play, and my costume required me to wear rubber boots. My grandmother owned a perfect pair, except she was a petite woman with small feet. I tried the boots with regular tube socks, but it made them impossible to fit in, and going barefoot meant painful friction against my skin to cause it to actually be pulled on. Buying another pair of boots was not an option since I would only be wearing them once. So my mother and grandmother opted for the thinnest socks possible. Nylon knee highs were decided on, and a pair was thrown on my feet and worked perfectly. Privately, I had to go through a lot of nerves about wearing quote unquote girl socks in public. I have two distinct memories around wearing them. One being sitting in my grandparents' house wearing knee highs with a t shirt and shorts, using the excuse that I wanted to get used to how they felt. I remember staring spellbound by the way they made my feet look. The other was bringing the costume to school in my backpack to change in the coat room and being terrified someone would walk in and see me. But even back then, there was a thrill of wearing the nylon, even though I wasn't aware that was happening at the time. My sensory preference has always had me gravitate towards texture. I understand that. And this distinct texture was something I really enjoyed, even though I knew I wasn't supposed to. So the secrecy combined with the taboo nature, combined with the nice feeling against my skin, meant that I was soon taking any opportunity to swipe a pair of knee highs or my mom's pantyhose as often as possible. Going public. The first time I wore pantyhose in public, I was caught by my mom. My parents were divorced, and I got home a lot earlier from school than my mom did from work, so I was alone often, and that meant I was raiding my mom's pantyhose for 2 to 3 hours every afternoon. I had a pair on when my mom got home from work a bit earlier than usual one day and announced we were going clothes shopping for new school clothes. I panicked and threw my pants and socks back on as fast as I could and began frantically planning how to get out of the pantyhose without her noticing. My plan was to go into the changing room and try on pants. I would then take them off, hide them, and then she would be none the wiser. Only my plan was foiled when my mom followed me into the changing room. In a panic, I attempted to remove my pants, pantyhose, and socks altogether. I took off my shoes, then tried taking off my pants, pantyhose, socks. I can't accurately say how loudly my mom asked me if they were her pantyhose I was wearing, but if my recollection of the events is accurate, people in the parking lot surely heard her. Ew. The creation of a fetish. The first time I ever had an orgasm was because of nylon. How many people out there have synonymous experiences with that? I know I did, right? I think I was listening to Ace of Base when it happened. That'll give you an idea how old I am. Okay, back to the story. I was around 12, and at that point, I'd been sneaking my mom's pantyhose and my grandmother's knee highs for a few years with varying degrees of success. I'd long since figured out how nice it felt for me to rub my feet together when they were covered in nylon. It didn't take long for me to figure out that it might feel good rubbing them on other parts of me. I swiped a second pair of knee highs and immediately slipped one over myself and tried rubbing it back and forth, but the nylon against my skin created too much friction to feel really enjoyable. So I put the other over my hand and just rubbed it around, quickly discovering that if I rubbed the tip, it felt amazing. So I ended up putting the other knee high over my COCK, because YouTube can't handle it, as well, and experimented around until I found a way to rub the top layer over the bottom layer right over the tip in a way that made me see stars. And before long, I was running to the bathroom to take what I thought was the most intense pee of my life, only to be shocked when a load of white stuff came out instead. I was hooked. Soon after, I went to move in with my dad, so my unlimited access to pantyhose came to an end. This also meant that I had to be very careful about where I stored my stash. But I was about to find another source of nylon, a new popular invention known as the internet. Ooh, what's this? The internet. Plot twist. After successfully hounding my dad to get a computer for assignments in school, and young ones, that's what literally we had to do back in the 90s. I quickly found websites dedicated to pantyhose content. Classics such as Cyberlegs, Pantyhose Addict, Dawn Desire, Amateur Adrian, and JB Video were mainstays of my browsing history. Wow, those names I have not heard in a while. In fact, if you look up the story section on Cyberlegs on an internet archive site, you can probably still find one of the stories I submitted. I also found a website called Pantyhose Experience, run by Pavel. I remember him. A name any nylon fan over the age of 35 will know quite well. Like, there you go. There were three things on PH Experience that became core facets of my sexuality: a subsection dedicated to men wearing pantyhose, a subsection dedicated to pantyhose encasement, and in that section promoting a site called kinkyelizabeth.com. But what was also amazing were there were other men who wore pantyhose, a whole community of them, and they were sharing pictures of themselves, talking about hosiery, encouraging one another, albeit largely via direct sexual propositioning. Men are beasts. Several names stand out from that forum, people who have interacted with, looked up to, and tried to be more like. These posts gave me the courage to do something I'd never done before: buy my own pantyhose. So I worked up the nerve to go alone as a teenager, where I nervously threw in a pair of leg sheer energy into my basket, as well as other stuff. But as nervous as I was, the cashier didn't notice. I survived. And suddenly I had my own pantyhose. I could do what I wanted with them. And apparently, what I wanted to do was wear them as often as possible in the privacy of my attic room, while publicly pretending like I had no idea what pantyhose were if they were discussed in front of me. Sidebar. This is my hot take, and don't shoot the messenger reading this. Yes, please don't shoot me. That would be, I don't know, that would be difficult for me, I think. But I think Suntan Lake Sheer Energy are C tier pantyhose. Ooh, that is a hot take. Okay, agree to disagree. They're not just my cup of tea for a feel, look, fit, and durability standpoint. Sheer Vitality, aka Sheer Energy Light Support, Off Black Sheer Energy, Sheer Resilience, before they made them into really thin spandex, were the A and B tier. And while I'm at it, I'm going to throw another grenade. CDRs are overrated. Ooh. Yes, they look like liquid sex on your legs, but Velcro has a softer texture. I prefer Philodora Aurora 15s. They are my S tier. Fit, feel, appearance, durability, all my exact speed. They're under $10 a pair. I run mine through the washer and dryer. On the delicate cycle, I'm not a complete savage. And they come out feeling soft and slippery as ever. All right, back to the story. I remember being very insecure in those years. I didn't want my family or friends deciding that me wearing pantyhose was too weird to continue associating with me. But again, the seed was sown. I got older and hopefully wiser. And one day while browsing online, I stumbled across a person who was openly wearing pantyhose and was my age. When I say openly, I mean out and about, under shorts, not like they were just clothes and normal to wear. Not for a fetish porn shoot, just out, such as to the movies, grocery shopping. This guy's name was the Pantyhose King. Oh, oh, wow. Maybe you know him. And seeing him became my first step into a larger and scarier concept. Uh, that I could wear pantyhose openly, not just in my room, not just for a quick throw when I didn't have gym class, not under long pants with socks up to my knees in the dead of summer. People could see me in pantyhose and be okay with it, and that maybe, just maybe, I'd find a partner who knew and supported me. Wow. Dating and sexuality. I had experimented with a few friends in high school who knew that I liked pantyhose, but our relationship was more based on mutually assured destruction rather than trust. We'd played around both with pantyhose and without, and while we weren't really into it, it was amazing to be able to openly wear nylon in front of someone who wasn't pointing and laughing at me, which nobody has ever done, but still somehow remains a deep seated fear of mine. The growing sense of wanting to be seen and celebrated for who I was growing inside me. By the time I was 17, I was obsessed with pantyhose encasement. The PH Experience forum had a whole section for it, and I checked it daily for updates. I was using pairs I'd worn to the point of tearing and trying to cover up as much of my body as possible until they were literally just ladders held together by the occasional strips of nylon. I eventually discovered photos of couples wearing pantyhose with unusual gussets. Hers went inside her, creating a nylon lined vagina, and his was wrapped around his COCK in a nylon sheath. It was the hottest thing I'd ever seen. Nylon conforming literally to every part of their lower bodies with people who found them hot enough to use during sex. The two of them finding that hot enough where they were having sex that way. I was still closeted when I began dating my first girlfriend, but I slowly opened up, and by the time I was with my third girlfriend, things were different. Her name was Paige. I met her at a party where she had come with friends. I noticed her instantly because she was wearing pantyhose under her pants. She was also fun to talk to and seemed relatively normal. I wasted very little time in asking Paige out, and she agreed. We went on a few dates and became official, and that's when I decided to tell her. I sat down with her in a non sexual situation and told her that I have a fetish for pantyhose, that I liked wearing them, and that if she was interested in dating me, she should know that ahead of time. And to my pleasant surprise, she was okay with it. She wore pantyhose daily anyway, and for her, the fetish was an added bonus of being both clothing and a way to turn me on. Win win. And suddenly, I had a pantyhose girlfriend. I have a naturally high sex drive, and since nylon is so heavily intertwined with my sexuality, it was a driving force in our phone sex and our sex. It was a perfect example, except for one problem. We were a train wreck of a couple. If I'm honest, the fact that Paige wore nylon regularly and was down to let me explore was one of the reasons we dated for as long as we did. I didn't know how to balance my fetish with real relationship, but I would have never willingly walked away from a regular wear. So I ignored the fact that we were both miserable. Luckily, she did us both a huge favor and broke up with me. Nylon is a double-edged sword for me. I have an addictive personality. Fortunately, that doesn't manifest as illegal substances, alcohol, or gambling, but it absolutely manifests as nylon fixation since, as I said earlier, I have a pretty high sex drive. It left me thinking that fetishes were viewed in one of two lenses. They were either a leg up to get a partner turned on and under their control, or it was a reason to spend all their time worrying that the fetish is what turned them on instead of the person. Since my sole experience was the former, I was not prepared when I fell in love with a woman who would become my wife, who we'll call Lynn. Left to my own devices, I would have absolutely been happy to turn all women into fetish objects, but fortunately for me, Lynn is a very strong person. She was happy to indulge me at first, but eventually I pushed her too far, and she turned the nylon faucet off after she discovered my buying tons of pantyhose, wearing them constantly while trying to hide the evidence by purging my collection while attempting to quit cold turkey. Lynn presented me with an ultimatum: speak with a therapist or a divorce lawyer. I chose a therapist, and it remains the best decision I ever made, and one I recommend to anyone with the means and opportunity to do so. I began learning balance, and I began learning to both listen and communicate my needs better. One particularly scary day, I told my therapist that I like to wear pantyhose, and to my surprise, I was suddenly able to tell someone completely neutral about my thoughts, fears, frustrations, and desires. And my therapist helped me parse out all these whirling things into words that I could share with Lynn. And share I did. Now Lynn knows that I wear pantyhose almost daily. She knows that I like to encase and that I like to sheath, and that pantyhose are a mainstay of my masturbation and sexuality in general. She's supportive too. She prefers I wear socks and slippers when I wear pantyhose, and she's not interested in wearing herself. But we've discussed why I like to wear, as it gives me confidence in the same way that makeup does when she puts it on. Finding community and self expression. Since I've been able to more intentionally communicate my needs and find outlets for my nylon exhibitionist side, I've even managed to make friends in the nylon community. Denier Doll has been someone I chat with at least 3 to 4 times weekly, sometimes about nylon, sometimes about life. Sometimes we exchange pics of cool new encasements we've done, sometimes we share pics of vacation. Since there's an inherent power dynamic issue with the guy sending explicit nudes to anyone, we've talked about personal limits with pictures that we share with one another. I've also found ways to express myself on FetLife, and it is interesting to have people reach out. In fact, one person that I've been a fan of for since PH Experience website sent me a PM one day to ask if it was okay with him using some of my photos as rotating screensavers for his phone. That's how hot he found them. I didn't have any issues with it whatsoever and remain flattered that someone enjoying me expressing my kinky side so much would be enough to make me their screensaver. And that's where I'll leave you. In closing, if I can part one idea, it is to communicate with your partners and keep in mind that communication means both ways. It means listening what you're hearing even if it's not what you want to hear. It feels scary, and it is, but it's worth it. Keep in mind that your partner may not understand where you're coming from, and that's okay. It's just as weird to them that you love wearing pantyhose as it is to you that they don't. Keep in mind that sex and sexuality are not the same thing. I can wear pantyhose to feel sexy without having to have sex. Balance, self expression, and contentment exists, but you have to be willing to put in the work to get there. Thank you, Pantyhose King, for reading this, and thank you all for listening. If you happen to stop by on my FetLife page, feel free to say hi. Wow, that was amazing. Thank you, Nylonnoisseur, for that. That was fantastic. I think everybody's gonna get a great amount of wisdom from that. And everybody, I'll be sure to put his information in the show notes. And remember, again, I'm going to continue to be the whore that I am. Check out our Patreon. We got all sorts of stuff starting from $5 all the way up to the elite. If you want to, be on the show, or if you want to see all the goodies. But I think honestly, the $10 one, the sheer level, is one you're all gonna love because that's when you get access to the archives. And that archive, let me tell you, I have been adding to it for the past, let's, I mean, I don't know, God, since 2015, I've had models submitting and everybody has consented to it. These are by hosers for hosers. And I know that y'all get a big kick out of it. So thank you so much again for listening. Thank you, Nylonnosaur, for that amazing story. And we'll be back soon. There's going to be some special episodes coming up with another hoser who I just did an episode with on Kathy's show. So hint, hint. And anyway, until next time, see ya. Via Omen Path. Simone looked at him politely, clearly not understanding why that was a problem, and Kaito realized she lacked the certain haunted cast to her eyes that he associated with former planeswalkers. For her, the advent of omen paths had been the beginning of a bright new era, not the ending of a beloved older one. Together, they turned to watch the square. Time passed. Eventually, Tyvar came bounding out of another alley, enthusiasm undimmed as ever. Why isn't that man wearing a shirt? Asked Simone. Kaito just laughed. Tyvar hurried to join them. Well met, fond companion, and new face! He turned to Simone, bowing slightly. To whom do I speak? Simone Walla, she said, sounding more flustered than flattered. Nico emerged from the same alley, walking like they were seasick and on the verge of keeling over. Slightly greenish with inexplicable nausea, they moved towards the trio. Nico, this is Simone of Strixhaven, said Kaito. Simone, this is Nico. They're originally from Theros, but presently hail from Kaldheim. A pleasure, said Nico. Simone clapped her hands. All right, follow me, she said, and scurried off down the alley. The others exchanged a look, shrugged, and followed her. The alley ended in a small courtyard dominated by a massive red dragon lounging on the far side like a cat, massive wings furled against his sides. Simone led them straight to him. Mr. Gilpack, I found the search team, she said as they drew closer. So you did, said the dragon, rising. Excellently done, Miss Walla. Kaito Shizuki, I presume. Yes, sir, said Kaito, bowing. These are my selections for the retrieval team, Tyvar Kell and Nico Ares. Niv-Mizzet nodded, his massive head generating a brief wind as it moved. Very well, follow me. A line of gleaming white wards appeared ahead of them. Kaito paused. Azorius work, said Niv-Mizzet. They'll let us pass. Wonderful, said Tyvar, although it wasn't clear he understood what he meant. Then, are you to be our host? I've always wished to speak in more depth with a dragon. If we have time, I will gladly speak with you, said Niv-Mizzet dryly. You're not the first ones here, of course. The Wanderer returned yesterday, following another of your companions. Kaito blinked. Our companions, he asked. Yes. A young girl, younger than Simone here, who calls herself Aminatu. She said you would need her help and to succeed. Nico stopped dead, staring. One by one, the others drifted to a halt and turned to look at them. Nico? Asked Tyvar. Aminatu? Asked Nico. Niv-Mizzet nodded. Yes. The child who spins cocoons of fate. Niv-Mizzet blew a plume of smoke, looking thoughtful. That would fit with what she's been seen to do so far, so I believe yes. I don't believe in fate. But fate believes in you, said Tyvar, clapping Nico on the shoulder. Come, let us disbelieve this stranger to her face. They walked on. Kaito frowned as he spotted a sign on the wall, marked with a sigil of the Boros Legion, warning of necromantic energy in the area and ordering an evacuation. Niv-Mizzet saw him looking and blew another puff of smoke. There's no such contamination, of course, he said. We just needed to clear the area to conduct our research. They stepped ahead across the wards, which warmed their skin for a moment before letting them pass harmlessly on. Niv-Mizzet continued without slowing until a woman in clothing devoid of a guild insignia appeared down the side street, waving one arm at his attention. That will be Madame Matrata, he said. She and her employer have been handling the arrangements of the researchers who will be remaining here on Ravnica while you undertake your work. He led them towards the woman until they were close enough for her to speak. You're late, she said bluntly, with none of the respect Kaito would have expected to extend to a massive flying predator. I'm precisely on time, now that our incursion team is here, he protested, with a growl of warning. Ertrada shrugged. Niv-Mizzet blew a plume of smoke. You know, I had hoped your level of respect would rub off on Proft rather than the other way around. The group continued down the side street as she had merged from, reaching the other courtyard. This one was larger than the first and more secluded. Researchers in protective gear, marked by sigils of the Izzet and Simic, bustled to and fro, aiming incomprehensible devices at the unassuming door. A tent had been set up nearby, where the Wanderer sat with Proft, Yoshimaru, and an unfamiliar young girl Kaito assumed to be Aminatu. It was strange to see an actual child here, but he'd seen plenty of strange things before. The Wanderer stood as they approached, leaving the tent to join them. Is it time? She asked. Yes, said Niv-Mizzet. Come along. Aminatu trailed behind her, Yoshimaru close behind. and Niv-Mizzet led the group through the crowd of researchers to the door, signs surrounding it declaring danger and keep out in dozens of languages, only some of which Kaito recognized. Niv-Mizzet gestured grandly towards the door. This is why we're here, he said with sonorous importance. Tyvar frowned. This? He asked. But this is just a door. Indeed. There was nothing visibly special about the door, which was made of stained cherry and decorated with an intricate design of carved moths and branches. It looked perfectly innocuous, not radiating any hostile magic or anything of the sort. And yet, Amanatu gasped and recoiled as her eyes locked on the door. For a moment, her fear and revulsion made her look younger than her actual age, like a terrified toddler had no business anywhere near the situation. The Wanderer patted her reassuringly on the shoulder, and Amanatu drew back against her, Yoshimaru standing in front of her as if to defend her from the door. It hears us, whispered Amanatu. Mind your words, or it will know our plans. That is an unsettling idea, thought Kaito. Come with me, said Niv-Mizzet. He led them back to the tent. It was a tight squeeze, with the dragon among them, but they managed, cramming themselves into an uncomfortable closeness. Is this an omen path? Asked Nico. A man with a long brown coat, who had joined Trotta during the return from the door, scoffed. It has none of the hallmarks of an omen path. If it is one, it's entirely unique. We've never seen anything like it. We have some recordings from inside, Mr. Proft, said Zimone, before Nico could react to the man's tone. Nashi's drone sent the footage back before they failed. It's a house. A house? Asked Kaito. She nodded. Just a house, perfectly normal. If in need of a good cleaning service. A little run down, possibly abandoned and possessed of some very strange angles. I think the space is distorted inside somehow. She paused and then beamed. I can't wait to get a closer look. Kaito met Tyvar's eyes and nodded. This was the researcher he had predicted Niv-Mizzet would embed with them. All right, Miss Simone, he said. I'm not entirely comfortable with Amanatu joining us, however, given her age. I can't, said Amanatu. What waits for you on the other side of that door would be infinitely more dangerous if it managed to get its hands on me. No, I stay here. This is where you need me. This is where I can help you. How? Said Nico. Amanatu looked at them calmly. I'm sorry, Destiny called. I understand why you hate me. But my magic and the magic of the house deflect each other, like water deflecting oil. Because of this, I can send you through the door with fate shifters. She paused. And what are those? Asked Simone. Amanatu shrugged. Tokens, really. Bursts of my power in physical form. They can be used to evade horrifying ends. Nico straightened, anger coloring their features. What? They demanded. You can do that? Our lives? Are they only game pieces to you? Their anger seemed to jump at Tyvar, although not as brightly. If you have the power to show us these answers, why did you let us march against Phyrexia without them? Why did we lose so many of our own in a fight you could have spared us? Because that's not how my power works, said Amanatu. It was hard enough to make these. When you make a choice that would lead to your certain death, everyone nearby who holds a token will see the outcome, feel like it's real, and then snap back the moment before the decision, giving you a chance to make it again. But the vision is short, no more than a minute, and it only works once for any single person. Even before my spark left me, my power wasn't without limits. I won't force you to take them. I don't take people's choices away like that. But if you refuse my aid, at least one of you won't come back. That's certain. The group exchanged looks. Finally, the Wanderer stepped forward. We're grateful for your help, she said. Only the foolish refuse aid freely given. Then take these, said Amanatu. She reached into a pouch at her waist and removed a handful of roughly carved figures, none larger than her index finger, and each of them shaped to give the vague impression of a person's face and form. She handed them around to the members of the team, giving the Wanderer a second. For your friend. Thank you, said the Wanderer. Will you mind Yoshimaru for me? Danger is no place for such a dear and loyal companion. Kaito, who intended to walk with her into the danger, raised an eyebrow and said nothing. Take these, said Etrata, picking up a square device from a stack of similar and offering it to Nico. They'll monitor the energies in the house and help us build a better idea of what sets it so apart.